All right.
Joel, I was thinking about you this morning, about some of the conversations that we'd have lining up at breakfast time getting food. And I thought, oh, I'm going to miss that. So, guys, I've got a PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do is I've got about a dozen slides, and I'm going to go through those, but then that'll take about, I guess, 20 minutes max. And then the rest of the time I want it to be just question and answer and interaction. So as we go through, if you have a question, if you type it in the chat, and Dion, if you can monitor those,
If I can.
so that I won't worry about what's going on in the chats. And then, let's just fire away with questions and answers. So I'm just going to bring up my PowerPoint, find where it is.
Blokes, you may need, if you do type a question, I'm not sure if it's chat specific, you may need to just send it to me only. Just do that anyway, I think.
Yeah.
I'll relay them on.
Okay, let's see if I can find share screen here. It should be on. There it is.
Nice.
So all you guys should be able to see that PowerPoint now. And one of the things that I think that I've learned over the last number of years is that for a lot of people working in where they get, input at work, they're sick of hearing about work-life balance. There's a lot of talk about it, but people don't go, well, how do you do it? But for me, it's not so much about work-life balance. It's actually about sustainability. And, I think that living my life is God's call is stewardship on my actual life. We think of stewardship about finances, but I think actually stewardship is much, much bigger than that. And so therefore I'm responsible how I run the race of this life. We're hardwired to live according to the seasons. And so I say here in Queensland, we really only have two seasons. We have not so hot and hot. And the difference is humidity. I love down in the southern states when we actually get the autumn colours. And that's one of the things that I love coming down to Better Blakes is just the cold weather. And we were in the UK in midwinter 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago. And the shortest day in winter, we were in Edinburgh, and the sun got up just after 9 a.m. and the sun set at 3:20. I was on Edinburgh Castle, and the town clock said 3:20 and the street lights were on. And the thing that I learned in that culture is that it's really a time of rest, because by the time you knock off from work and get home, you've already had a few hours of darkness. And so lifestyle's conducive to just staying indoors and taking it nice and easy. And then what happens is that when spring comes along, there's this rejuvenation, and then summer is reproduction, and then the autumn is the slowing down again. And historically, before technology, before electricity, our lives were really controlled by seasons. Our diet was controlled by what was available at the season. Most people got up when the sun got up, went to bed shortly after the sun went down. And so you had this rhythm that was just great. Comes along electricity and you can work 24/7 and be a lunatic, and we're not wired for that. So our bodies are designed for a flow or this rhythm of the seasons. So our body's is designed for alarm and activation, and what's supposed to happen is that we're supposed to recover, wind down, and then that's when we do rest and rejuvenation. And so this looping cycle that we get that we're supposed to do
already.
And so what happens is that, I'm supposed to be energized, supposed to do stuff, then I'm supposed to switch off and calm down. So I often say, if I had a link of rubber bands, imagine that you get up in the morning and the link of rubber bands is nice and relaxed. You get up and it stretches out, and then at the end of the day, you relax it back down, you go to sleep, wake up in the morning nice and relaxed, and then you do the whole cycle again. Important principle here is we have to do recovery before we do rest and rejuvenation. They're two different things. And we don't do recreation or recreating and reconnecting and relationship until we're first.
So we've got nothing much else to do, have we?
Until Some nice background noise there. I don't know what that is. So we don't get into this stuff down here until we've done recovery and we've done rest and rejuvenation. And the problem is many of us confuse recovery with R&R. So what happens is, and the example I often use as teachers, if you look at teachers, what happens is they go crazy on this 10-week term. They get to holidays and they're in zombie mode and they think they're doing R&R. And when you're in zombie mode, you're actually doing recovery. That's all you're doing. You're not doing anything else. And so therefore, you've got to do recovery before you get to R&R. So just a little technical stuff is our body picks up on our 5 senses that there's some sort of threat. Our internal senses kick in. So the amygdala, which is like the smoke alarm in the brain, and the left or orbital frontal cortex, which is overseen by the smart part of the brain, says false alarm, real alarm. If it says a real alarm, it actually turns on your nervous system, turns on your adrenal glands, and then your recovery is everything's supposed to slow down, and then in sleep, we're supposed to relax and chill, and then we do recovery stuff. So that's the normal process.
People in that parasympathetic.
So really, really important here to understand this is that recovery time allows my adrenal system return to balance. This needs to be done daily, weekly, and at the end of high demand periods. And I'm going to explain a little bit about body chemistry in a moment, that why this is critical. And what happens is a lot of people who are high output people or high capacity people, they're actually addicted to their adrenal system. And adrenaline is very, very addictive. Adrenal abuse is a significant contributor to mental and physical unwellness. Excuse me. So with a lot of research, and I'll talk a bit more about the chemicals of that in a moment. In the rhythms of life, we're hardwired for regular recovery and rest. You know, we look at the creation narrative in Genesis, is that God rests, and we always talk about in Christian circles about Sabbath rest, but the truth is we're not really good at practicing it. Many of us just, we get busy, but actually how do I allow my body time to recover? Now, why is it really important? Stress can kill. And this is really, really important that you get this. If you were to end up in my office with significant stress burnout, is that it will take you 3 to 7 years to fully recover. So stress is better to be prevented rather than actually cured. And it has a long-term effect in the body. So when we get distress, it affects how our brain operates. It actually affects our heart. So we get cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, all those sort of things, gut issues, so digestion issues. And it's really important. There's a great link between our brain and our gut. Muscle tension and soreness and aches and pains, shallow breathing, so we don't regulate our breathing, which is really critical to getting the right oxygen, CO2 levels so that we can actually live a balanced life. And then people with chronic stress have constant cold hands and feet. So if you're one of those who climbs in the bed and your beloved says, "Don't touch me," you got cold hands and feet, probably your system's a bit under stress. So stress affects every part of the body. This is the stuff I want to really focus on, is about the 5 key chemicals in the brain. So I mentioned adrenaline. So adrenaline gives us a rush, and that gives us a nervous energy as a good way to understand this. Adrenaline, I believe, is only 1 molecule different to cocaine. So it's highly addictive, but you don't have to pay street value for it. You just give yourself something that gives you a rush. But the problem is we're not wired for high levels of adrenaline ongoingly. What we're wired for is adrenaline rush, then everything shuts down and we find balance again, and then another rush. But we've got a culture that's quite addicted to adrenaline rushes. Serotonin gives the blissful feeling. Serotonin makes us feel good, and think of that as a smart energy. And then melatonin regulates sleep, so that's our sleep energy. And then cortisol is our stress energy, which controls stress. And then dopamine is about pleasure and motivational energy. Now, what happens with stress is this. The stress chemical cortisol increases when we get distressed and we don't have enough relaxation. And the problem with high levels of cortisol is that cortisol is neurotoxic. So that means it's actually is poisonous to our brain. It's actually toxic to the brain. So high levels of cortisol stops our brain from functioning properly, but it stops our brain from reproducing chemicals and neurons that we need for a healthy life. The easiest way to explain this is if, you can recall stuff, fire, 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 and then when you're under stress, it's like, oh, what was that? I know that, but I can't just put my finger on it because the brain's been affected. Second thing is that the nervous energy, the adrenaline goes up. So what happens is you get more edgy, you get shorter fuse. Sometimes it can go to the extreme of where you get flat and depressed. And so then these two feed off each other. At the same time, serotonin, the smart energy and the blissful feeling decreases. That's why with adrenal burnout or stress burnout is that we always talk about what we see presenting is depression and or anxiety because of the chemical balance in the brain's gone out. Melatonin goes down, so your sleep energy goes down. So the very first sign of distress is changes in sleep patterns. And we often talk about in our field, 3 changes that happen. So insomnia, you can't go to sleep, you can't switch your brain off, or you go to sleep and then you have early morning wakings where you just, you're awake, can't go back to sleep, or hypersomnia where you get too much sleep. And that's all to do with the imbalance of melatonin. And then lastly is dopamine drops down. So your motivation goes down, your sense of pleasure goes down. Now, this is a really dangerous combination for blokes because what happens is that the quickest way to try to fix this is, okay, I'll go and fire dopamine. So if guys have had addictive patterns, so they've been addicted to or exposed to porn or gambling, or, we can self-medicate with alcohol, is that what happens is that particularly, say, alcohol dampens the adrenaline and the cortisol, increases the pleasure stuff, but it doesn't actually bring balance to the nervous system. And we just keep looping in. The same can happen with just simply where guys who get up in the morning and go, I just need coffee. Give me a triple shot coffee and a sugar boost, because they're trying to stimulate their system rather than actually balance the system out. Now, when somebody has chronic stress, is that what we're going to do is we're going to have to use chemicals to actually, medication to balance their system out. And what we use is an antidepressant called an SSRI. And so that stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So what it does the reverse. So when we use medications, is that, I'm going to just go backwards, is that what happens is the serotonin level comes back up, your melatonin levels come back up, your dopamine comes back up, your adrenaline drops, and your cortisol goes back into balance. So we've got to do the reverse of that. But it's not a simple process. And so it's really, really important that really chronic stress needs good interventions. And it's not just how you think about yourself, but radically changing your lifestyle, but also using medication when it's chronic. Now, prevention's better than cure. So what can we do to prevent? Well, Dr. John Arden, who's one of the leading therapists and neuroscientists in the world, and I've had the privilege of meeting John and talking with John. He's a lovely guy. He's developed this acronym, SEEDS. And so first thing we know is that social interactions. The problem is when your chemical balance gets out of whack is that you start to withdraw from people. And parts of the brain that need social interaction to light up, which are really for us, social interaction. Interesting that COVID is that I'm noticing that our whole society stress levels have gone up, the cortisol levels go up. And there are 3 things that are big triggers for cortisol levels increasing. So the first one is uncontrollable distress or uncontrollable discomfort. So I'm not in control, this is not good, and so that increases cortisol. Hence, that's what COVID's all about. And the easiest way to understand this is learning to drive a car, is that driving a car is a little uncomfortable, but you're motivated and you have a sense of control. You don't get the same cortisol levels. And so now with COVID is that our life has been restricted and we have no choice about that. And some guys, work has been impacted profoundly and they have no choice or control over that. Second aspect that increases cortisol is social isolation. And that's been the whole thing about COVID. And then the third thing is that with that social isolation, once you start developing feelings of loneliness, cortisol goes through the roof. So it's not surprising that we're seeing lots of cortisol levels and stress in our society because COVID's hitting the big three that trigger that. Second one is exercise and physical activity, and particularly aerobic exercise and non-competitive. Because when you do aerobic exercise is that you start to burn off adrenaline and it changes the level. Competitive sport tends to increase adrenaline, whereas non-competitive exercise is really, really, really important. So I say to people, increase your movement, increase your walking, get outdoors, smell the roses, be in the sunshine. Really, really, really good for your health. Crazy thing about exercise, and we all say, yeah, amen, exercise is really important. The crazy thing about exercise is you never get the desire for exercise until you start doing it. It's a really, really funny phenomenon that you actually have to do exercise to get the motivation to exercise. But if you don't start, you don't have any motivation. So it's really crazy, catch-22. Education, learning new things. So it's not actually going back to school or learning stuff. It's about having hobbies and interests in learning new things. This last year, I've built a caravan from scratch. And so one of the things I've done is lots and lots of YouTubing and researching. And my weakness is electronics and electrics, but I've done all the electronics and electrics in my van, signed off by my electrician mate. And so I've got now this U-Butte lithium battery system with solar panels, and I can run my 240-volt aircon and fridge off my lithium batteries and not run out of power because of my solar stuff. Things I never knew. I've become, you know, a pseudo-expert in things that I didn't know, and so keep the brain active. The research on this is from Japan. They took octogenarians, so 80-year-olds, and they said, want to be part of research, and they split them into two. And one group had to learn new things, and one had to not learn new things. And when they died, they autopsied their brains. And the 80-year-olds who learnt new things, you could actually see new cell growth in the brain. And the 80-year-olds who didn't learn new things, their brain atrophied. So atrophied is the dying off and the contraction. And so, you know, even at 80, they could change their brain structure by learning new things. So being a lifelong learner is really important. D is for diet. And so really simple things. Less processed food, less simple carbohydrates. So lots more of fruit, veggies, and nuts and stuff that makes our gut have to work, because there's a link between the gut health and brain health. And omega-3 oils, really, really important, and complex carbohydrates. And in our culture, we eat too much processed food, too much simple carbohydrates, and we just basically eat too much. So there's a whole heap of research around periodic fasting and what it does for your physical health and mental health. And so the Bible talks a lot about fasting. And so how do we spend time maybe reducing a bit of our intake, but actually changing our diet? Now, as much as I love catching fish, I'm really a fussy fish eater. I've been spoiled. I only like eating really fresh fish. You know, so caught and on the pan. And so I supplement that with omega-3 fish oils daily because that's really, really good for me. And the last one is sleep. And getting the right sleep patterns is absolutely incredible, important. And so sleep is about quantity and quality. The average Aussie bloke probably needs 8 to 9 hours sleep. And you know when you're getting the right sleep is when you wake up in the morning refreshed, ready to go. You're sharp. And monitoring sleep patterns is really, really important. And so therefore doing things to protect our sleep. So in my life, I try not to do any work after 7 o'clock at night. And I have a routine of a pre-sleep. So the hour before sleep is critical. And so therefore is that then I've got to train my brain that my pillow's for sleep. So I don't do anything that stimulates my brain, because the simple principle is a bored brain is a requirement for our brain to go sleeping. So if you keep stimulating your brain, you won't ever get good quality sleep. And I could do a whole presentation just on sleep alone. In fact, I could do a whole presentation on each one of these facets. I've got a clip here. All right, let's see if this will run. Yep, I'll go back, do it again.
Not getting any sound, Peter.
Okay, it's just a music background.
Let it run.
So the clip is, you know, she's just laughing in the background. And the reason I show that is that one of the keys to keeping good stress levels is fun and play and laughter. So when we laugh, we actually produce really good opiate-based hormones in our brain, which make us feel good. They're the same ones that you get after exercise. And sometimes we just get so serious in life rather than actually finding things to laugh about. So every day I find something to laugh about. And I laugh at myself a lot, and because it's good for my brain chemistry. The more I study neuroscience and counselling and people, as the slide says, we are indeed fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm happy to make slides available. So if you wanted to email to get the slides, where it says www, change that to peter@peterj.com.au. So peter@peterj.com.au, and I'll make the slides available for anyone. And I'm going to finish the sharing. So we're back here, and that's the teaching bit. So I'm happy to questions and interaction around, you know, clarifications, because when I do this, a lot of guys go, well, what do you do? How do you do that? How do you actually apply that? And so I'm keen to hear from you guys.
All right, thanks, Peter. Does anyone have any questions? You can either unmute yourself and ask your question. Oh, yep, Joel Kramer's got one through. When I'm crashing and I realise that I'm struggling and looking for those quick hits, what can we do? Thanks, Joel.
Great question. And I think one of the things that's really important is to learn to read my system really well to get the early signs of crashing. And then I've got to go, what is it that I need to start changing? Now, to make this even, I guess, more fine-tuned, is that I live with generalized anxiety disorder. I've had it all my life, and I take an SSRI. I've been on medication for 20 years. So one of the things for me is I just monitor my sleep really closely. And as soon as there's a change in my sleep, I know that there's something going on. And so then I'll intervene. And so it could be maybe I've been stimulating my brain too much before sleep, or maybe I've got to just change, or maybe I haven't been doing it. So what I try to do is read the system and then intervene early. If I am crashing, what I may need to do is go, okay, I need a bit of downtime. I need to take a couple of days off and not do anything, but at the same time start addressing the things, the lifestyle issues around. And I think a simple thing that can happen is, you know, when you've got a busy day, put an end to the day and say, okay, end of the day, stop. Now I'm going to change. I'm going to go for a walk or whatever. So because I work from home, I wear corporate dress to work. I get dressed to work, even if I'm on Skype all day or Zoom all day. I get dressed for work. I do my day. I do what I need to do. I knock off, get undressed, so that I've got a ritual in my life that goes, this is work, this is non-work. And particularly for people who are working extended hours, whether it's ministry or someone like me who does after hours, it's still important to go, that's the end of the day. And if we're on call or available, how do we manage that's really important, of being able to go, nah, that can wait, because most crises are not real crises. You know, you can put them off and hold them off.
Yeah, good one.
Does that help?
I hope so. Next question is from Paul. What are some examples of recovery that are different to rest and recovery?
Okay, great question, Paul. For me, I need solitude. So, you know, when I doing output and get extended, is that for me to come back is I actually need space. So one of the things that I do is in my recovery time, if I need recovery time at home, as Nerily will say to me, you need to go to your garage and tinker. And so I don't listen to audio books or music. I just need space, and the more space and time and solitude I get, the quicker I come back down. And that's one of the things that I love about beach fishing is I get lots of solitude with me and God. And Nerily can tell the difference is that when I've recovered, she notices I'm ready to be more engaged with her. Different people need different things, but finding out, you know, what are the things that help me. So it's that sense of that I'm coming down. Breathing is also a really important thing. A fascinating thing about our nervous system is that there's part of our nervous system that what happens is that when we inhale, our heart rate increases, and when we exhale, our heart rate slows down. And there's this little circuit breaker break that controls that. If we didn't have that, our heart would just continue to go faster and faster and faster. So I like to think of what are the things that circuit break me to allow me to go so that I don't get faster and faster, because there's a physiological component to that.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. Andrew says, so much great information. Where should we start for the best results?
Okay, I think what I often say is if you go to the seeds, choose one facet that's the easiest to work on. Don't start with the hardest, all right? Because, you know, the problem with New Year's resolutions, they only last a week because they're just too ambitious. So it might be going, okay, the easiest thing I can do in the seeds is, okay, I just need to make sure I go for a walk every day. That's the easiest thing to do. So once I do that, then I go, okay, what's the next thing I can do? And because I've got a whole routine now, is I'll come back to Joel's question, is that I go, what am I not doing that I normally do?
Yeah.
And so then I need to pick that up again. So start with something easy in the 5 things. But if you're feeling really chronically stressed, a good GP. So I have a great GP that I see regularly. And my GP is a Christian who says her mission is to keep me alive and well. And there are times when it goes, I actually need to talk to a skilled counsellor, psychologist, psychotherapist who gets this and to help me work on that. All right.
Yeah, that's a really important one. And I think, you know, historically blokes tend to avoid a GP, but
Yeah.
I think if we look at it as a way of, you know, not just I've got a sore leg or my back sore or whatever, but it's a holistic thing, and trust your GP that they can have, the more you see them, the better they can help guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, and that's why I have a long-term GP who I've worked with closely and I see regularly, because I go, how much do I spend on servicing my car?
That's right.
I spend more money and time servicing my car than looking after my body.
Yeah.
And I got to go, come on, blokes, we're not invincible. And sustainability changes in the seasons of life. I'm 61. I can't do what I did at 30. I can't do what I did at 40. I can't even do what I did at 50.
Yeah.
And so my life health issues are changing, and I want a good part of my pit crew as my doctor.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Another Paul has asked another question. As an introvert, I love working from home without others around. Do introverts need a minimum amount of social interaction? Otherwise, I'd be happy to never leave home.
Wayne Niebling said to me this week, he said, if I hear another introvert saying, I love COVID, he said he's going to wring their necks, okay, because he's an extrovert. All people need time and all people need social interaction. There's a different balance for people.
Yeah.
And you know, the difference is often for introverts is that they want to have social interaction with a fewer number and deeper, whereas extroverts want more people and not as deep. And so finding that balance and you know how you do that, it's really interesting that our neighbours across the road and on this low side of our house, they're not followers of Jesus. One's nominally Catholic, but they don't have community life. And during COVID, they have just been craving interaction. So we've had social interactions here in Queensland before we could actually be in homes. So we'd sit on our driveways and order takeaway in. We've done that a few times. We've did an Anzac morning, and then Nerili's birthday, she turned 60 last month. And so when the COVID restrictions lifted, they came over, and so we had the three sets of couples and we ordered takeaway out, and they're craving interaction. And so for us, we're going, we don't really need that interaction, but they do.
Mm.
And so we're seeing it as part of reaching out in ministry because we're still connected, but finding the right balance for introverts and extroverts is really important. And if you're an introvert married to an extrovert, oh, may God bless you with incredible wisdom, okay?
Yes, that's good. All right. No, I don't have any other questions at the moment, but I just want to recap one of the things you said that's helpful for me in particular. Of the 5 SEED acronym, the acronym you spelt out, the SEED, what I heard you saying really was just to find, if you want somewhere to start, to find one that you think you can achieve and do that well rather than trying to do all of them and make yourself go crazy.
Yeah, Gian, and I would say do it well for a month or 2.
Yeah, great.
Don't be ambitious. Part of healthy lifestyle is getting patterns and habits.
Yes.
And the late Professor Peter Rousseau used to say that neurons in our brain can live to 130 years, but we don't have lifestyles that support that. And so as I'm getting older, it's like, and with COVID, it's been really interesting because all my speaking and schools work, which is probably, you know, about a third of my work, on hold. And what's happened is that all that's been filled with counselling. And in fact, the counselling demand's gone through the roof.
Yeah.
But I'm not extending my hours. I'm sticking to what I know are my workable hours that are sustainable for me. And because I keep saying to all those that I supervise is that on the back end of this, we're going to have some pretty significant fallout, particularly from frontline workers who have been running on adrenaline. And so when the adrenaline stops, their systems are going to be way out of whack. And I keep saying to all the counsellors and psychologists I work with, look after yourself, don't extend yourself because we're going to go for the marathon.
Mm.
And so, you know, I'm practicing this of going, this is what's sustainable. And with our sustainability time, we should plan 20% buffer because nothing goes towards plans. So what happens if you plan 100% of your usable time and it blows out, so you rip off your sleep, you rip off your relationships, you rip off your devotional time, your self-care. So a good principle is how do you make enough buffer for everything that goes wrong? So in my practice and so my usable time, we plan 80% of it and we've got a bit of buffer there if we have a crisis or something. But again, it's not 100% and then extend.
Yeah, that's good. Another question here. Can you elaborate a little more on the difference between work-life balance and a sustainable lifestyle?
Yeah, I think work-life balance is particularly trying to say, how do you manage work and home life? Whereas I actually want to say sustainable lifestyle is a bigger picture of how do I manage my work, my marriage, my family, myself. So, for example, shed is really important for me because that's part of my community where I get to be honest. And so the key guys in my shed they can eyeball me and go, how's it really going? And I had a hiccup a week ago, and, I was able to get on the phone and go, I'm not doing well. I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with this. And like Jason said earlier, being able to have those guys that you can just be honest. And so my mates know me really, really well. And there's those things that I can share at a really deeper level that you can't share in a bigger forum. But how do I balance everything that gives me a productive life and a sustainable life? And I review that every year, and we have a rolling 5-year plan. Because again, in 5 years' time, when I'm 66, I'm not going to be able to do what I'm doing now.
That's right.
So the question is, what needs to change for my energy levels and my age so that I maintain a good balance of work and home life, but I actually make my life sustainable and my relationship sustainable and healthy?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Joel asks, he's heard from a South Australian police friend that exercise before rest, so after he's come off a shift, do some exercise before he rests can help ease into the rest.
Yep.
What are your comments on that?
Yeah. Personally, I like to exercise at the end of the day after I've done work, because it actually burns off the adrenalines. And what happens is that, that 30 minutes after exercise, you feel good because you get a hit of endorphins and enkephalins, which are opiate-based, morphine-based chemicals in our brain. So what happens is you burn off the adrenaline and cortisol. You get this hit of opiate-based chemicals that make you feel good, which actually makes your rest transition better. Now, I know there's some people who love going to the gym in the morning and starting their day that way, but even if you're doing that, I still think burning off a bit of exercise at the after work, after a shift, is really important. And those who are doing shift workers, particularly coppers, as I say to them, you've got to transition out of work into home. And so some of the things is, how do you do that? And going for a walk. So I recommend to people, I spoke with a lady whose husband's a copper, and she holds a really high government position, and she's an introvert, and her husband is a mega extrovert. So when she gets home, it's what she started to do after I did a talk is that she actually takes her gym shoes and a change of clothes into work, and she actually goes for a walk when she knocks off from work before she gets in the car to go home. Because when she's on home, it's a different ball game. And so she's now built into a routine. I'm going to do this movement and exercise before I get in the car.
Yeah.
And if you've got young kids, that's really good, because if you've got young kids, you're on deck when you get home.
Yeah.
So build it into a different rhythm.
Yeah, that's good. That helps answer. Jonathan had a question. He's a new dad. What are some ways he can adjust to new demands, especially finding time for recovery?
Yeah, I remember this conversation with a pastor mate of mine who's got 4 or 5 kids. And he said to me, I can't do recovery time. I walk in the door and I arsenic hour where the kids are going crazy and the wife's trying to do everything. And I said to him, mate, take a shorter lunch break and go for a walk. And his church is on acreage. I said, knock off and go for a walk before you get in the car to go home. I've got another pastor mate in Melbourne, is that his recovery time is that his recovery is reading. So his ritual is he knocks off, he goes to McDonald's, buys a coffee, and puts in headphones, no music or anything. He just headphones to say, leave me alone. And he reads. And he does 45 minutes reading before he goes home to the kids.
Yeah.
That's his routine. Works for him great.
All right, nice. I think it was Ashwin asked, is there any medications available off the shelf to stimulate balance of seeds? Yep. Because it can get hard or stressful to improve on just one at a time.
Yeah. So St. John's wort is a natural SSRI, so a natural antidepressant in low doses. So if you have to check with any natural stuff, you also have to check combinations. So it's like you can't use St. John's wort with an SSRI or other medications. And as a sideline, if you're going in for surgery, you need to tell them you've been taking St. John's wort, because you'll freak out the anaesthetist, because it actually takes you longer to recover. All right. So a lot of people don't realise that our pharmaceutical industry found its base on natural medicines. But if you're taking something natural, it still interacts. So St. John's wort is a really good one if you're feeling something that you need to get a balance. For melatonin-based medications, so Cicadin is one. It's a prescription one and over-the-counter. But you can buy melatonin online. It's over-the-counter in the US. And the safe range is you can take up to 10 milligrams, and the recommended is 2 to 5. And the beauty about melatonin is you take it an hour before you go to sleep and you'll feel naturally tired. And what you don't use, your body gets rid of. But again, you want to use it as an intervention to get sleep right and then to wean off it. But for some people, maybe working on some stuff if they're feeling stressed, St. John's wort can work and helps you to give a bit of leverage to work on one of the areas.
All right, nice, thank you. We've got about 5 minutes left. I've got one more question here from Adam. Can you dig deeper on having the healthy patterns established, because we will be entering a new world after COVID with new challenges, because this is not a we will just get through and back to normal time?
Yeah, great question. For me, I think one of the things is what's the weekly and daily rhythm you have. So I do recovery time daily, and so that's when I knock off, get changed, I have downtime. Then I have blocks of recovery time during the week. So Wednesday morning, because I work late on, I have an after hours appointment on Tuesday. I have a couple of evening appointments on Wednesday. And so Wednesday morning is traditionally my sleep in morning. So if I haven't caught up on my sleep because I accumulate a sleep debt, Wednesday morning is my normal catch up for my sleep. And so that's a block. Now, does that get changed sometimes? Yeah, it does. But generally that is. And then Friday afternoons is another recovery time for me. So I generally knock off after lunch, and Daryl and I just go and do some fun stuff that's not relationally heavy, but and so again, I say you need to look at your daily program and you look at your weekly time. Now, I'm not a time management Nazi type bloke. It doesn't work for me. Some patterns, because patterns work for me. And so it's about, okay, what are the patterns? So if I'm working from home, what do I do when I knock off as a pattern? Maybe that's when and I've noticed in COVID, a lot more people who've been working from home are out walking. Narrowly stopped walking late afternoons. Now she says, if I haven't done my walk by 4:30, forget it. There's just too many crazies out there and too many dogs, and you can tell she's an introvert.
Yeah.
You know, so finding the patterns that work.
Perfect. All right. We've got about 2 minutes, and actually Max has just asked a question which you might have time to answer. It's just a simple one of what's the difference between simple and complex carbohydrates?
Okay. Complex carbohydrates tend to be things like nuts, cereals, and grains. Okay. A simple carbohydrates is like carbohydrate. And not that bread's not a good thing, but again, we get too much reliant on it. And so therefore, if you're going to have bread, have wholemeal bread, have rye bread, have things. So things that your gut has to work a bit to process. It's really interesting. This is a whole field of study of a diet and neuroscience is what actually chemicals get produced when your gut's not working properly. And so think of more raw type products to get your gut. And Joel will appreciate this. I'm not food. there's some really good stuff in the vegan food that is actually complex carbohydrates.
Good one. All right, I think we might leave it there. Thanks so much, Peter, for sharing that. I know you are so passionate about this stuff and always keen to share. If you missed it earlier, you can email peter@peterj.com.au. I put it in the chat, so scroll back and find that, to ask for a copy of the slides that he presented. If you're keen, that's great. We might even make them available with this recording anyway. So stay tuned for that. And we can now head back to the main room. So if you find if you're on a PC, or a laptop, if you look along the bottom, you'll find a button that says Leave Room. You can click that and you'll go back to the main room. If you get stuck, I'll hang around here for a little bit. So if you get stuck, just ask me a question directly. Otherwise, Simon can boot us out after a little while. So thanks again, Peter, and we'll see everyone back in the main room.
I like that strong, dignified look there, Jeff. On my,
What was that, Tim?
I said I love that strong, dignified look you put on when you got nothing to say.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, very focused.
For those of us who can't leave the room because we can't find the button.
Yeah, if you're on an iPad or a phone, I'm not sure where you find that.
Yeah, I'll have to wait till I get kicked out. You're stuck with me for a bit then. Yeah, I'm on my end. You're looking well.
Yeah, thank you. Trying to put my best face on this morning.
You're not faking it like these Queenslanders. We're keeping it real at 5 degrees or whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it's warmed up. I think it's 4 degrees now, so we're okay. I've been watching the frost slowly melt outside.
Oh, okay. No frost in our Gambia, just a bit overcast. I'm not going to go and cut wood later, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah, something PJ's never done in his life, cutting firewood.
That's right.
Yeah, I can't leave either.
What device are you using, Carl?
iPad.
iPad, yeah. I'm not sure. I should check that out and work the process. Anyway, I will ask, I'll ask Simon to bring us all back now, if I can.
Yeah, because the other night we had a button to leave, but tonight it's not showing there.
It's not there, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We've lost Tim. That's